Hello parents, welcome to Parent Shift, a place where we speak about conscious parenting. Now, I want to spend some time today talking to you about how your child is changing in your presence. And this is a simple truth that we need to understand, that our children are constantly scanning our energies and they're responding to our energy and becoming a person because of the way we are. Now look at your own behaviors. If you are someone who is angry or respectful or a problem solver, or everyone calls you for help, or if you're someone who's constantly anxious, or if you are someone who is forgetful or lazy or unstructured, or on the other side you're somebody very disciplined, sporty, athletic, you eat healthy, our children are watching all of these things and they are responding in a certain way. Each one of our children's responses is over a period of time becoming their pattern of responses. Watch your children, what they're doing, and you will invariably find that one or more of the behaviors that they consistently display has been taken from a predominant parent or from both the parents in certain proportions. Well, you will say, so what? It's obvious, that's what they're learning from. But here is where the danger comes. Because the child is scanning your energy and many times it's learning those behaviors without really any significant experience or any significant explanations attached to it. The child is making its own sense of the world. Now, let's say you are someone who is helpful, you are instructive, you are also someone who guides others, and the child is watching you. And if the child also tends to pick these qualities up and learn them, then the child is naturally learning to direct its environment and it's learning these things, learning to do these things with its friends, with its system, wherever it goes, it plays sport or it goes to a daycare center. Now, if the child does this in a balanced way, it will get good results. It will be called a leader, it will also be someone who is taking charge and getting things done, learning the concept of self-respect, etc. However, if the child does this in a very uncontrolled fashion and tries to control others, there are other children or the environment in which it is, if it doesn't see these behaviors in the right way, if your child bosses around, if your child is pushing others, then it can give very bad results to the child. Now, this is where the challenge really starts, because when the child scans you, it copies you, it picks up the behaviors, it doesn't have a real clear explanation to it. If the behavior gives it good results, it will become a habit. If the behavior is not giving it good results, then it might leave something very good and naturally positive to go on to some other behaviors and cope with this environment. So, you as a parent have to be very careful of how you are instructing your child. It is one thing to teach a behavior to a child consciously. It's one thing to teach a value to a child consciously. It's another to let the child just scan, learn something and experiment with it. Because if the child experiments with a behavior and it becomes helpful, then it becomes a good habit. But if the child experiments with a behavior without understanding it and it does not yield the right results, the child may not proceed in that direction even if it is a good behavior. That's what we need to understand. Now, let's take a contrary example to this. Let's say your habit was something like pulling a drama on someone or manipulating someone, a deceitful approach of doing something. You threw a tantrum, you were angry or you were deceitful and the other person gave in. Now, this is a negative behavior that the child has observed. In the first instant, it was a positive behavior. Now, with this negative behavior, the child again copies you and does this in its environment. It throws a tantrum, it gets angry, it screams or yells. Now, suddenly, if there are other children around, or if it's one of you who witnesses this behavior or some other adult who witnesses this behavior and gives in into the child's behavior, now see what has happened. It's a bad behavior that the child picked up and it used it, and when that bad behavior gave a result, it again becomes a habit for the child. So again, what I said earlier applies, that if you have taught a behavior consciously to the child, it's wonderful. But if a child picks up a behavior from scanning your energies, your mannerisms, and experiments with it without an explanation, it can be a dangerous way to learn something. In fact, this is how children miss out on learning very good habits from parents, or tend to learn very bad habits from parents by scanning the energy, taking on behaviors and response mechanisms and experimenting with them. If they get good results, they continue those behaviors. If they don't get good results, they leave it and they do something else. The other thing that happens is, whenever a child fails, if it again doesn't have adult supervision, if it doesn't have sufficient explanation, again the child is going to make its own meaning. And many times when children fail and they don't have an explanation or support around them, they become helpless. And in that helplessness, many times they do something to cope with the situation, whatever they know as an evidence. Sometimes it helps, and sometimes it is teaching the child a maladjusted behavior. Like in this scenario where we spoke about the anger and the tantrums, or we spoke about the child trying to lead the space but others not yielding in. If the child fails in a scenario like this, it is going to sit and think, oh my God, what do I do? Do I need to shut up? Do I need to fight back? Now, whether it learns to shut itself up or it learns to fight back, it may not be a proportionate, balanced, scientific approach. Again, that is becoming a coping mechanism. If it tries it once, twice, and if it doesn't know anything else, if it doesn't know any other better behavior, then those fallback behaviors become predominant ways that the child deals with its situation. This is why many children are withdrawn. They don't share, they don't tell others what's on their mind. Or there are so many children out there with aggressive behaviors. They are grandiose in their mannerisms. They use words, they use actions to try and threaten others. So often some of these behaviors are very difficult to trace back after some time to their origin. That's why you need to be very careful as a parent. So now and forever around your children, be careful. They are constantly scanning you, picking up evidence from you and choosing to behave in a certain way in the world. If you are consciously teaching your child behaviors, values and mannerisms, it's wonderful. But if it's happening in an uncontrolled fashion, it may end up yielding very negative results and behaviors and attitudes that the child doesn't really have an explanation of why it is doing what it is doing. It's just doing it because that's what it saw, that's what it experimented with, and that's what yielded a certain result, or something that the child did to cope with its life. Be careful. Who you are around your child is shaping your child constantly.